research that took several years to complete and finally came to the conclusion that cannabis helps many gastrointestinal symptoms. The study was recently published in a peer-reviewed journal, Medical Cannabis and Cannabinoids, as a brief report titled Relief in Gastrointestinal Symptoms with Medical Marijuana Over 1 Year. The authors were from Thomas Jefferson University in Pennsylvania. Thomas Jefferson is one of many universities with a medical cannabis research program, but one of the few universities that actually study the benefits of cannabis. The researchers evaluated people with gastrointestinal or GI symptoms that are chronic. Over 60% of the adult population has GI symptoms, and they're associated with a poor quality of life. Medical treatments are not always effective. Some medicines like proton pump inhibitors, PPIs, like Nexium or Prilosec, they cause bloating and nausea. People have turned to medical cannabis for relief, and this study aims to evaluate whether it works. So participants had to have at least one of a list of GI symptoms, including poor appetite, heartburn, nausea, constipation, diarrhea, and stomach pain. They were recruited to participate from a dispensary in Pennsylvania. Most of them were white female at the average age of 42. Most did not use prescription medicines. About 80 to 90% used cannabis regularly. They were given surveys on day 0, 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, which asked about their GI symptoms and their cannabis use pattern. 1/3 reported that cannabis improved their GI symptoms a little, and 1/3 reported cannabis improving their symptoms a lot. Participants used 2 or 3 different cannabis products of their choice over the 12-month study. Over 50% of the study participants inhaled. Vape carts, flower, and pills were the most popular products used. The most common reason for stopping or changing a product was accessibility. The store just ran out of certain products. Over the study year, there was significant improvement in GI symptoms. The most common side effects were increased appetite, although that might be a desirable effect, fatigue, anxiety, and cough. This is the first study to demonstrate a long-term benefit of cannabis use for GI symptoms. Additional studies should assess the effects of THC to CBD ratios, type 1, type 2, type 3, cannabis dosing, and different methods of administration. So this study was interesting to me, not because of the results. Most cannabis users already know that cannabis helps them with their GI symptoms. What's interesting is the method. A dispensary in Pennsylvania is contributing to cannabis science by recruiting patients for study. It's simple, not costly, and very useful. I believe many dispensaries are not participating in research because they just don't know how and are afraid of the unknown. The irony is that cannabis dispensaries are selling some of the best medicine on this planet. Since the medical establishment is slow and hesitant, dispensaries should step up. There's a lot of information that comes in and out of the store about the consumer experience. Dispensaries should participate in studies. For those looking to increase their revenue, studies are a way to attract a new demographic. As well, it should be a responsibility of a cannabis operator to contribute to greater knowledge out of respect for what the plant does for us. So what do you think? Should dispensaries be required to participate in research? This is Dr. Jean Talleyrand with High 9 News.
This is
I don't know about required, but it's cool if they do decide to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to. I think that would be super, super fascinating and interesting to do. And at the same time, you know, Dr. T, I'd say a lot of these experiments, we've been doing them for a number of years and just getting antiquated results. But like a real study, I would love to see something like that with some type of dispensary partnership.
I've been
familiar with this. Well, go ahead, Sean. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, I'm familiar with this group at Thomas Jefferson. In fact, if my memory serves me correctly, I was their chief science officer that enabled them to get this license. Mm-hmm. The problem with that program in Pennsylvania is that they had rolled out the initial bunch of licenses, and then they talked about this pairing of cannabis businesses with the research universities to do this research program that you're talking about, Jean. And really, Thomas Jefferson was one of the real leading forefront schools. There was also Temple and a couple other schools where there's already people doing cannabis research. There's already Schedule I licenses. There's Sarah Jane Ward at Temple and other folks who, again, are investigating more the medicinal aspects. This program was designed to do exactly this, Jean, which was open studies of the dispensary customers that are coming in to generate observational clinical results, right? So these aren't actually clinical results. They're not taking a wide demographic of different individuals with pre-existing conditions and different some people overweight, some people are diabetic. When you do a clinical study, you really have to represent a large swath of the population, and that includes people with pre-existing conditions. But this type of observational data that you can get through just handing out a questionnaire at a dispensary is just so valuable, because everyone can tell you whether or not that medication works to alleviate their malady. And so certainly that kind of data is very important. Now, to go back to the researchers at Thomas Jefferson to see if there's actually a mechanism that they understand. I mean, maybe there's a reason why things like that are high in CBG have a certain effect in the gut, because CBG is known to have that type of impact. But I think where this kind of falls down is that I'm not sure, Jean, if these types of results are going to win over the doctors who are on the fence, right? So the real question is, they'll say this isn't really clinical data. This is observational clinical data. So there's easy ways for existing doctors in the existing pharmaceutical establishment to sort of poo-poo this. But I think that this is highly valuable. I think all dispensaries should be doing this, and all states should put in programs like this. It's interesting because what happened in Pennsylvania, this program was stalled because the people who got the initial licenses when they made Pennsylvania medical ended up suing the state and suing these businesses because these folks were only up in operation for like less than a year and a half. They had not made the return on their initial investment. And the next thing you know, they announced that these multi-state operators are teaming up with the big research universities. How does that impact my business? I just put a whole lot of money into building a grow in the middle of Pennsylvania and hiring a bunch of people here. I mean, this should be something that should be done in a more equitable way, because basically what it was Thomas Jefferson teaming up with a multi-state operator who is then just going to use that connection with Thomas Jefferson to generate more revenue and more sales, and basically put the smaller guys who didn't team up with the universities out of business. I don't like that.
I agree with you. That's exactly why we do what we do, because we're trying to get the small operators. They're coming for you. They're coming for you through the universities. If we don't band together and work together, then we're going to lose the small operator footprint in this.
Amen.
And it requires research.
Maybe the doctors can help me out on this one, because I'm always looking at things through the follow the money lens. And I think this tracks back to the Arena Pharmaceuticals acquisition by Pfizer at the end of last year for $6 billion, specifically for their gastrointestinal cannabis research. Right. I think you're going to see a lot more of these studies coming out, and this is big pharma is going to be going heavy on this shit. That $6 billion that pharma, that's just a drop in the bucket for them. I think that people need to just remember that Pfizer holds over a third of the patents in the cannabis industry. The shit's coming.
Great point, Rico. All right, fair enough. This was very, very interesting. Thank you so much for that, Dr. T. We are going to roll right into a commercial, and we're going to be right back.